trendy team nicknames have been something that I've been a fan of for a long time. The Legion of Boom for Seattle as they now go into another Super Bowl. The Showtime Lakers, the Bad Boy Pistons, the Invincibles for both Arsenal and then the Australian cricket team 6 decades earlier. But without a shadow of a doubt, Hollywood Hawks was my least favourite. And I say that painfully because even something like the Baby Bombers of 93, as crap as this sounds coming from a Hawthorn channel, is kind of catchy, and I do get the alliteration there with the double B, and of course the Hawks having one with Hollywood, but considering that it was deemed a little bit more by the media than it was by nearly anything else, I just don't really like it all that much, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I'm happy to note that now it looks like that modicum is dead. The Hawks, yes, may have played that Hollywood style, if you will, in 2024, which I still don't 100% agree with, by the way, because I'm still one that's like, well, you can still let young people express themselves. You know, they weren't doing anything illegal, if you will. But last year, that Hollywood-isms was kind of out of their game. Yes, they were celebrating. Yes, they were enjoying each other. But there was no shadow of a doubt, I don't think, that from an outward perspective, the professionalism had gone through the roof. But I think that is firmly behind us now. I don't think that the Hawks are playing with the outward arrogance of a team that hasn't performed yet. They are now playing with a confidence of a team that can now walk the walk, even if it looks like they're not doing as much of the talking like they did a couple of years ago. So where does that stand now with the Hawks? Well, it seems like the H in Hollywood has now been replaced by hybrid. There is a hybridity going on at the Hawks at the moment that Sam Mitchell is clearly wanting to bring to this football club. And I think Mitchell has figured out quite rightly that in this day and age, pocket aces are not going to be the only hand that win you the World Series of Poker. Just having your 18 in their 18 roles is not going to get the job done. Even Brisbane, having guys like Cam Rayner, Zach Bailey, who can move up the ground a little bit. They moved Jasper Fletcher to a wing to half back, even when Kadeem Coleman went down, and they still had that running trio, by the way. Eric Hipwood had a little bit of fluidity in his game, but an even more flexibility because he went back for a few weeks, as well as Brisbane were under fire with their key position injuries. The Hawks seemingly are going even further than that. When we look at the defenders that could potentially have a role up the field at some point in time next season, whether it is going through the midfield or even going forward, that is a lot of names there. And that's not even taking into account the versatility of a Jack Scrimshaw, for example, who is very well proven that he can play tall and small as per necessary, with Scrim's one-on-one work being one of the most outstanding highlights of last season that maybe only Hawthorn supporters really spoke about, wasn't really addressed by the media at all. And whatever you think of the ruck situation, and I've already done a video on that, so I'm not going to bore you with my thoughts because I already have them on camera, so go check that out if you haven't watched this video already. But clearly they are wanting Reeves, Meek, and Chol to be able to do other things. I can't remember who exactly posted it, but I will give credit to the person that did post on Twitter that Chol doing a Jai Amos style wing pushing forward role if the Hawks are going to have two rucks, so play Reeves and Meek in the same side, and Chol can come off a wing or something like that to get him involved in the play and then push him forward. Jai Amos did it very well for Freo's match sim over the weekend. It's not the worst idea I've heard. I'm not going to say that the Hawks are going to go ahead and do that, but I think it does show that more and more fans are really getting on board with how much the Hawks are going to want to play around a little bit. Now, granted, this is a positive video, and I think this is something that a lot of players are going to be able to get behind, and hopefully the fans will as well. And yes, we've even got guys like Carl Amon and Massimo D'Ambrosio who are going to be able to rotate off the wing half back as per necessary. Even a guy like Harry Morrison, who's gotten a lot of maligned feedback, I would say, from Hawthorn fans over the years. His defensive running is his strength, and I think why Sam Mitchell loves him so much. Yes, he has kicked some crucial goals in his career, but I would definitely associate him more as a defensive rather than an offensive wingman, getting back to help out, and D'Ambrosio did that with a lot of good effect last year. But effectively, unless your name is like Tom Barras, Jack Gunston, or Jai Newcomb and Connor Nash, you are going to be having to do more than just traditionally what your role would be. I don't think Jai is going to be like a midfielder who spends some time deep forward, in my opinion. It's not going to be enough for us to go, oh yeah, Jai does both in a significantly, equal or equal-ish kind of way. I don't even think that he would be having, 30% of his time on ground up forward next year. That would just be my takeaway there. We don't know that Connor Nash can do anything else apart from that defensively minded midfielder. And Gunners is what he was last year. We don't need him to do anything else, especially if he's kicking 70 goals in a season. Not that I'm suggesting that he is going to need to do that this year in order to be successful, but I don't think we're going to be throwing Gunners into another role. And granted, we have done that in the past, infamously in that 2017 season. He basically played behind the ball the entire time. And even the Hawks themselves with high half forwards, I said before, with Bailey and Rayner for Brisbane, we've even got guys that are trying to get up the ground a little bit more. Connor McDonald looks like he might be more of a full-time mid this year. Please and thank you. But Nick Watson and Dylan Moore have proven that they can go into centre bounces and have a little bit of an impact. So even though we're going to have a 23rd player on field, we're not going to have a designated sub anymore. Clearly, the Hawks will want to be using their rotations in a much more flexible way. And if we are with momentum, maybe we don't need to be as defensively minded at the centre bounce or even around the stoppage. But one thing that's going to be really important when it comes to our offensive ball movement is our use inside 50. Because we're going to have the flexibility of 3, if not 4 tall forwards per game next year, I think it is up to those high half forwards. Connor McDonald, even if he is a full-time mid, but I'm still going to count him as a part of that high half forward rotation. More Ginnivan, I should say, I nearly said Gunston then, but more Ginnivan and Nick Watson, is that if they are the ones kicking inside 50, it's more likely going to be on the lead to someone else rather than at the top of the square. Because the Hawks are going to be wanting to have this flexibility, ball movement is going to have to be key there. It's not going to be a case of, all right, we're going to have a whole lot of flexibility, but our ball movement is going to slow down. The Hawks were definitely not a slow team either on transition or ball movement last year, and that's only going to continue this year, you would think. Common sense would say that that's probably going to be the case, which means that Gunston, Deere, and Lewis especially are going to be hitting up at the ball carrier more often. Now, if I said to you, I want you to try and think of our top 3 most clinical users statistically kicking the ball inside 50 last year, who do you think they are? I'll give you a second here, and even though I know that I can cut out some pauses when I edit my videos, I'm going to actually not do it here. In fact, I might even give you a countdown, but I just want you to think. It doesn't have to be in order. You don't get a point for this or anything like that, but I just want you to think, who do you think would be the top 3 best ball users inside 50 for the Hawks last year? So going from outside 50 into inside 50, whether it's kicking it at a target, long-range goals, but statistically, who do you think they would be? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. James Warple, who was top 5 in the league last year for kicking inside 50 efficiency. Josh Ward was second, and Jack Gunston third. Now, what does that mean in terms of what that's going to bring next year? Well, it's not really those guys that are on the list. I know Warple is not there anymore, but obviously Ward and Gunston are. But that means that guys like Moore, McDonald, Watson, Ginnivan, these guys that are going to be kicking inside 50, Newcomb, we hope. And if we are going to bring in, other guys like Cam McKenzie, Sam Butler, if we're going to bring him up the ground a little bit more, we'll wait and see, even though I think Butler's going to be more of a defensive forward this season, or I hope that he is because he played that role beautifully throughout the final series, is that if the Hawks are going to do what we did a little bit earlier on in Sam Mitchell's tenure, which was just boot the ball to the top of the square, we as fans, I think, are going to rip our hair out, and clearly I don't think that's what the Hawks are going to do either. But I do feel like our offense is going to take a step up this year if we are going to be using this flexibility to our advantage and generating space inside our forward 50. Even the better defensive teams last year, the only way to get through numbers is going to be with accurate ball use, which the Hawks do have, luckily for us. But I'm looking at the new co-captain in Newcomb. I'm looking at Ward to continue his fantastic work inside 50. But those high half forwards are going to be the key in getting the offense and the scoring up for the Hawks this year. But overall, the Hawks are going to be looking at, not just pocket aces like I said before, but how the Hawks are going to deal with hands like King 9 suited. How they are even going to use, say, Deuce 7 offsuit, for example, and bluff their way through it if they can, just to generate something different is going to be our biggest point of difference, considering midfield and overall team improvement is going to have to come internally. And I also think that's why we targeted guys like Cam Nan, Jack Dalton, and especially Ollie Greaves in the rookie draft, luckily for us, is because they did more than one thing in their under-18 seasons. And if they can also bring that sense of hybridity, well, as these young Hawks continue to come through, and maybe Bailey McDonald can do this on a wing too in future, we will see. This evolution of Sam Mitchell's game plan will continue to be on a linear trajectory. It is not just going to be one and done process, hopefully setting us up for our 14th flag. So are you excited for seeing different Hawks in different roles? Which role change would you like to see that hasn't been spoken about yet? Or what is the role change that you think is going to benefit the Hawks the most in 26? Comment below, let me know. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video if you liked the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.